Hello! So, as some of you might have noticed, I didn't exactly post a video last week, and that's actually because I was in Florida visiting with Colleen. Now, I actually intended to record a video there, and I brought a lot of equipment along with me. However, the audio setup I ended up bringing along was far from adequate. But I did still shoot some footage while I was there, so I wanted to show you some of the results of a little challenge I issued myself while on the trip. Here's my challenge. Try to get a variety of cinematic looks using only 2 LED panels, as well as some diffusion. So keep in mind the looks you're about to see were created using only stuff that I could fit in my carry-on, and less than $100 worth of lights. So let's take a look. So very quickly, let's talk about why I chose these LED panels, the Viltrox L116T bicolor LED light panel. This section isn't sponsored, these are just panels I personally like to use and have used for a very long time. So the reason I went with these panels is because, as I already said, they're bicolor, which means they can be set to tungsten, daylight, or anything in between, which is very helpful when trying to match actual practical sources. They're very accurate, they're fairly portable, and you can run them on Sony NPF batteries. And not to mention, they have a nice swivel base with a 1/4-20, so you can mount it to small light stands. But regardless, most of these setups can be repeated with a multitude of different light panels or even some point sources, so kind of take what you see here and extrapolate out. Now, regarding getting cinematic lighting setups out of smaller, lower output lighting fixtures, we've got a few tips. However, before we do, if you have time and enjoy the video, a like is very much appreciated. If you want to see more like it, a subscription is, again, very much appreciated. But if not, that dislike button works extra well if you hit it twice. So the first tip that I can offer when shooting with lower output panels is let the environmental lighting kind of guide your frame. Try to find that frame before you set up any lights and see if you can take advantage of any practicals in the area. When using lower output or smaller fixtures, you really want to take advantage of any light source you possibly can, whether it's daylight or a tungsten fixture or just a light in frame. Any of these will help both motivate the lighting that you're adding, as well as just adding light into the frame, which when you're working with lower output stuff is generally a good thing. So all in all, use the environmental lighting, find your frame, and just try to amplify or use existing lighting as motivation. Now, another tip I have that more qualifies to using just smaller sources in general is to actually use diffusion to make the source larger. Now, what exactly do I mean? Well, basically, when you're using a source as small as this, you really end up getting more hard light. Now, this being a panel means you're going to get ever so slightly softer light than maybe a smaller chip LED. However, in a lot of situations, you're still going to want a bigger overall fixture, and so one way to do this is to shoot this light through a larger diffusion. In the example here, instead of bringing a diffusion disc or other light modifier, I actually ended up just bringing a cloth of unbleached muslin, which gives a nice warm quality to the light while also softening it dramatically, so getting rid of a lot of the harsh shadows. As far as the physical setup here, I actually just had a light stand and a Mafer clamp that I brought with me, and I used the Mafer to just clamp down on a pole that I then clamped the unbleached muslin to with 2 A-clamps. So a very compact setup, but also a very, very budget-friendly setup. Now, another limitation you kind of have to deal with when dealing with smaller, lower output lights is the fact that they're lower output. One thing I've found as I've kind of progressed a little bit in my film career, I mean, I'm still towards the beginning, obviously. One thing I found is that the higher output the light, the wider I can go with the shots. So with smaller, lower output lights, you really kind of have to go closer in a lot of times. Now certainly there are exceptions to this rule. More specifically, what we did here with the ocean shot is I actually ended up putting the light stand slightly into the ocean to give us an ever so slight far side key. I know it's more to the side, but I tried to get a little bit to the front, so it gives her a little bit of definition, a little bit of interest within the background of blue hour going on. And because we cut off most of the ground, you also don't necessarily see where the light is coming from or what the light exactly is. And one final tip that's slightly contrary to something we already talked about: don't be afraid to use the fixture bare. These are lower output fixtures, and so it means if you can get a little more output without putting a modifier on, and it gives you a nice shape and definition, go for it. Now, obviously, if you're looking for a soft look, still put a modifier on it and try to get that soft look, but don't be afraid to experiment. Okay guys, that's all I have for this week. I know it's been a long time coming, but I hope you enjoyed the different environments of the stuff we shot. And I'm actually really interested to hear if any of you have used these smaller portable lights to successfully create some cinematic looks, or if you have them up on your channel. Let me know, because I'd love to see some examples. So, as always, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.